When I was out west for a wedding a couple of weeks ago, I ran across an advertisement out there for a new play that was premiering. And the title of the play caught my attention. It was called The Last Goodbye. I don't know anything about the play. I hope to see it someday. But I gave those few words a lot of thought after they caught my attention. Sometimes I think the last goodbye will finally be the easy one, because we have had so many goodbyes before it. Goodbyes that range from the pinprick to the heart to the sword piercing the soul. These end of the summer days bring their goodbyes, don't they? So many of us said goodbye to our neighborhoods for this new and hitherto unknown neighborhood called university. And it can be tough to say those goodbyes and to live in the absence of someone or someones we have loved, and with whom we have known the familiarity and the safety of coming to trust, only now to have to start from scratch all over again. Trust can take a while. To say nothing of the parents here this morning, who add this now to their ongoing list of goodbying that they have had to say again and again and again to their daughters and their sons as they grew up and they grew into their own skin, so different now from their own, once that little body got wrenched from within. Some of us, it seems to me, live in denial. We somehow talk ourselves into thinking that it's always going to be the same after this goodbye. Some of us are grateful for this break from each other, given the tensions of leaving and the tensions of this emerging separation and this new shot at independence. I remember watching one mom 2 years ago driving away on this same Sunday, and I waved to her goodbye, and she did the double fist thump out the window. And she was grinning out loud. Oh my gosh, I know that, I understand that. I understand the tensions of these last days at home and moving in, and how do we do this kind of thing. Some goodbyes, though, as we all probably know, are full of tears. We deep down know it's never going to be the same. And so there's this air of finality to this goodbye that we can't quite admit to. Saying goodbye is one of the hardest words we will ever utter or hear. It requires bravery, and it requires some humility. Because I have to admit that they're going on without me now. Believe me, I know this every May here. The bravery is this. Will we be okay without them now? Will they be okay here in this new place with all the issues here and without me, without us? And who am I now that they are less dependent on me? Bravery indeed. And humility too. In this scene in the gospel you just heard proclaimed this morning, Jesus is a man who is about to say goodbye to his family, to his friends, to his followers. You see, he's making his way now, Luke tells us. It's the beginning of him making his way to Jerusalem, which is where it would all come to a crashing end. His life, his friendships, his dream, his work. There in Jerusalem, he would say his last goodbye. Not just to all of that, but to his very own life as well. And as he makes his way towards this last goodbye, he talks of the important things. And he talks about the narrow door. The narrow door is the door not too many are willing to pass through. It's the narrow door of love. True love requires humility. And the humility is this. As Jesus describes it at the end of that gospel you just heard proclaimed. The first shall be last. The last shall be first. In other words, true humility, my friends, is the willingness to move to the end of the line. The willingness to move to the end of the line. In other words, this is humility. Before and up till now, I have been the most important thing in the world to my kid, to my family, to my parents, to my parish, to the Catholic Student Center. But now I have to begin to let go. I who was leading the pack, I who was needed by my kid, I who was the most important person in the world to them, I have to move now to the end of the line so that they can step up now, so that they can lead, so that they can be the heads of their own lives now, so that others can become more important than I am to them. Ugh. Can I make myself less important to my son or daughter or to my friends or to my community? Can I make myself less necessary? We all have to, if we want this to turn into true love, if we want this to turn into real love. But it is the hardest thing we will ever do. It is the hardest thing we will do, I think. I am reminded of the words of the great prophet John the Baptist, written in another place in our Testament, who said of Jesus once, Now, it is time for me to decrease, he wrote. Now is the time for me to decrease, so that he might increase. Now I have to leave. Now it's time to say goodbye. In other words, now that Jesus is here, John could begin to see and say, my work is done. It was his turn to say goodbye. Can you imagine saying that clearly? Okay, honey, now it's time for me to become less and less important to you. Now it's time for me to become less necessary in your life, so that others and especially you, can rise up. No wonder so many of us don't know when to say goodbye, and most of us don't know how. It's because we're not willing to not be as needed and to not be as important as we always have been. Do you hear the humility in this? Do you hear the humility it takes? Do you see why this is the narrow door that so few choose to pass through? All over the world at this very moment, in airports and bus stations and train stations, up on the South 40, and right here after this Mass, lovers kiss and say the words that break their hearts. They take a deep breath and they say, well, this is it. Goodbye. Parents too. Priests too. People who are at the age to retire and turn over the reins of their business or their classroom. And then there's that last goodbye to life itself. It is the ultimate letting go of being important and necessary. To say yes to death when it is time is the ultimate humility. No wonder we're so afraid to die, to even think about dying. No, it's not easy to say goodbye. But one thing I know from saying it again and again, and I will be the first to admit I am terrible at this stuff. But one thing I know deep, deep down inside me is that every goodbye carries its own blessing. Every goodbye carries within it its own blessing. And if we trust it, it will be the beginning of everything else. Because on the other side of that narrow door, on the other side is life. It will be to find love waiting there that I have never known. True love, love's freedom, is what waits for us on the other side of this narrow door. We get them back, you see? We get them back. We get our kids back again, but as more than our kids, as more than our sons and daughters. We get them back now as sons and daughters and friends and teachers. We get them back. If only we mustered the courage, the bravery, and the humility to pass through. It's a long time now ago that the words, "God be with you," disappeared into the word goodbye. But every now and then, a trace of those words shines through. I see it this weekend in the faces of moms and dads, and shining through their tears. I see it in the faces of their daughters and sons, left alongside the curbs and the doorways of their dorm rooms. In that goodbye, in every goodbye, is God.